Thor is the very first god to represent the divine side and step into Ragnarok, opening the curtain on the life and death war between gods and humanity. In Norse mythology, Thor is not only the god of thunder but also the purest embodiment of war and destruction. He has no need for schemes and no reliance on complex strategies. The only thing Thor believes in is his own absolute power. Since ancient times, his name has been carved into the fear of all beings, as he once annihilated 66 Jotuns single-handedly with a single swing of his hammer, a feat that firmly established him as one of the most powerful existences to have ever lived. Thor's signature weapon is Mjolnir, a colossal divine hammer that possesses destructive power far beyond imagination. Unlike ordinary divine weapons, this hammer is a living entity that only truly awakens when facing a worthy opponent. Before that moment arrives, Thor must wear the gauntlets Jarngreipr to restrain the terrifying force of his swings, not to protect his hands, but to protect Mjolnir itself from being shattered by the excessive power of its wielder. When entering battle against Lubu, Thor does not rely on any elaborate tactics, choosing instead to overwhelm his opponent with sheer absolute strength. Every swing of his hammer carries devastating force capable of crushing the space around it. Despite enduring numerous heavy blows, the god of thunder remains standing firm, his body barely shaken. As the match reaches its climax, Thor finally releases his true power. He hurls Mjolnir straight into the air, then catches it with tremendous rotational force and acceleration, bringing it down in a strike of overwhelming destructive power. This attack completely shatters Lubu's legs, forcing the proud warrior to drop to his knees before divine might. In the final moment, Thor merges all of his power with Mjolnir and unleashes the strongest blow he has ever used. At this point, the god of thunder holds nothing back. The collision creates a colossal shockwave that shakes the entire arena and surpasses even Lubu's most powerful attack. True to his nature as a god of war, Thor delivers the decisive strike only after his opponent has exhausted every last ounce of strength. With this finishing blow, he crushes Lubu and secures the first victory for the divine side. Zeus is the supreme king of the gods, and the one who holds absolute authority within the Greek pantheon. He is the god who personally overthrew his own father, the titan Kronos, and rose to the very pinnacle of divine power. In stark contrast to his majestic image in legend, Zeus appears in Ragnarok as a frail and skinny old man, seemingly weak and aged. However, hidden within that body is a power that far exceeds all conventional standards, an existence that witnessed the birth of the universe itself and still stands as an absolute ruler. The most terrifying aspect of Zeus does not lie in his appearance, but in his speed and endurance, which are almost beyond imagination. Zeus's punches are so fast that they surpass the perception of the naked eye, beginning at a speed of 1/100th of a second, then accelerating relentlessly with each successive strike, pushing the limit far beyond all normal reflexes. Zeus's signature ultimate technique is the time-transcending fist, a legendary move that once belonged to Kronos. It is a punch with the power to govern time itself, which Zeus engraved into his own body, turning it into a symbol of the supreme might of a god king. In his battle against Adam, despite repeatedly being struck by his own attacks, and despite having his jaw and neck broken by the copied power, Zeus does not fall. He continues to fight as if pain no longer holds any meaning, even forcibly realigning his own body to keep throwing devastating punches. When pushed to the extreme, Zeus releases his strongest form. He compresses all of his muscles to their absolute limit, turning his body into a mass of power that is nearly indestructible. In this state, every movement Zeus makes carries the full authority of divine power. The battle quickly turns into a suffocating close-quarters clash, where neither side dodges anymore, and both attack relentlessly, testing the limits of each other's endurance. However, this form is also extremely dangerous, as it can only be maintained for a short time before his own body begins to collapse. The battle comes to an end when Adam's eyes can no longer withstand the pressure of excessive power copying. Even after losing his sight, Adam continues to fight on pure instinct until the very last moment. And when the decisive moment arrives, Zeus delivers the finishing blow, securing victory for the divine side. However, after that battle, Zeus is no longer the arrogant god he once was. For the first time, he acknowledges the strength of humanity and gives Adam his absolute respect. Poseidon is the clearest embodiment of the absolute arrogance of the gods of Mount Olympus. As the god of the sea within the Greek pantheon, he always places himself above all others, carrying a cold and distant presence. In Poseidon's eyes, all living beings are nothing more than lowly insects, and humanity is not even worthy of existing. The moment his pride is offended, Poseidon is willing to strike down anyone without mercy, even his own kin. This arrogance defines the way he enters the arena of Ragnarok, not to fight, but to carry out a sentence of divine punishment. From the very first moments of his confrontation with Sasaki Kojiro, Poseidon quickly proves why he is regarded as one of the strongest gods of Olympus. The most terrifying aspect of Poseidon is not his dominion over the sea, but his near-absolute speed. Each thrust of his trident is so fast that the naked eye cannot follow it, creating countless afterimages that make his opponent feel as if they are being attacked from all directions at once. In a single instant, Poseidon can pierce through an opponent's body, shatter their weapon, and evade every counterattack with ease, as if everything around him is moving far too slowly. He can continuously summon weapons from the void, unleashing relentless chains of thrusts like a raging storm, leaving his opponent no opening to react. The pinnacle of Poseidon's power is the attack known as Medusa Alope Demeter, where countless simultaneous thrusts completely cover the surrounding space from every direction, making it nearly impossible to defend against. For most of the battle, Poseidon holds absolute control of the match, and it seems as though victory is firmly within his grasp. However, he commits a fatal mistake by completely failing to acknowledge Sasaki as a worthy opponent. His arrogance prevents him from realizing that every second of domination is being turned into data for the human before him to evolve. Sasaki reads the rhythm of Poseidon's attacks, adapts to his speed, and gradually enters a realm of combat that Poseidon no longer fully controls. At the decisive moment, while Poseidon still believes his opponent cannot reach him, Sasaki delivers the final slash, executing the god of the sea right there in the arena of Ragnarok. Poseidon becomes the first god to fall, not because he was weak, but because he never considered humanity a true threat. Though he is the first god to be killed in Ragnarok, Poseidon is still recognized as one of the most terrifying existences in the entire tournament. Zerofuku. Zerofuku is the god of misfortune from Japan, characterized by a childlike personality, volatile emotions, and an extremely short temper. He was not originally a god of misfortune, but a kind deity who genuinely wished to bring happiness to humanity. He willingly chose to bear all of mankind's misfortune by absorbing their pain and despair, exchanging it for moments of peace in their lives. However, this noble act gradually caused him to see only the dark side of humanity. Human selfishness and greed slowly eroded Zerofuku's spirit, transforming his original kindness into deep-seated resentment. His jealousy continued to grow as he witnessed Buddha bringing true happiness to humanity without having to shoulder their suffering. Zerofuku's mind gradually collapsed, and in a moment when he could no longer control himself, he split his soul into 7 parts, creating the 7 lucky gods in order to restrain himself from destroying humanity. By the 6th round of Ragnarok, those 7 gods had reunited, giving rise once more to a resentment-filled Zerofuku with a single purpose: to punish Buddha. His weapon is the Axe of Misery, created from his own flesh, blood, and bones. Every pain and despair accumulated within Zerofuku's mind makes the axe grow stronger. This weapon can continuously change its form, unleashing unexpected attacks from every direction and completely disrupting the opponent's defensive rhythm. At the same time, Zerofuku's body itself can bend and twist in unnatural ways, allowing him to alter his angle of attack in an instant and increase his striking power in an unpredictable manner. However, Zerofuku is quickly overwhelmed when facing Buddha, not only by sheer power, but by Buddha's calmness and deep understanding. Amid the blood-soaked battlefield, a strange bond gradually forms, allowing Zerofuku to experience redemption and to be truly heard for the first time. Yet the true tragedy erupts when the seeds of evil long sown finally awaken, marking the resurrection of the dark god Hajun, who devours Zerofuku from within. Hajun emerges as a being of pure destruction, devoid of emotion, without a future, and impossible for Buddha to foresee. His overwhelming power completely dominates the battlefield, pushing Buddha into the most perilous situation he has ever faced. Nevertheless, Zerofuku's soul never truly disappears, silently resisting Hajun with the last remnants of his humanity. In the final moment, Zerofuku chooses to sacrifice himself and merge with Buddha through the Volund ritual, transforming into the mighty Nirvana Sword Zero. With this weapon, Buddha delivers the decisive strike that slays Hajun and brings an end to Zerofuku's long-standing tragedy. In his final moments, Zerofuku finds peace, reconciles with Buddha, and smiles before fading away. His sacrifice secures a crucial victory for humanity and leaves behind one of the most heartbreaking stories in Ragnarok. Shiva. Shiva is the proud god of destruction and one of the supreme gods of Hinduism. In Record of Ragnarok, he is regarded as the spiritual leader of the Hindu gods, a warrior who embodies absolute pride and an unshakable sense of justice. Shiva possesses a highly distinctive appearance, with purple skin, 4 arms, and a body constantly overflowing with combat energy, as if he were born solely to stand on the battlefield. Shiva's fighting style is inseparably tied to his signature dances, where every movement flows in harmony with the rhythm of the universe. Through continuous and fluid footwork, he not only delivers powerful strikes, but also completely disorients his enemy, making it impossible to grasp his direction. With the advantage of his 4 arms, Shiva can easily nullify attacks from all sides and counter with relentless chains of blows, forcing his opponent into a position with no room to resist. Shiva's core combat state is known as Tandava. In this state, the heat within his body continuously rises, causing every attack he unleashes to carry scorching force capable of burning his opponent. Tandava is not an instantaneous outburst, but a process of constant power accumulation, where the longer Shiva fights, the more dangerous he becomes. When pushed to his absolute limit, Shiva surpasses Tandava and enters his extreme form known as Tandava Karma. This is a state in which he forcibly drives his heart rate beyond safe limits, causing his entire body to ignite like a living flame of destruction. Shiva's power and speed surge dramatically in an instant, but the price he pays is that his own body is being burned from the inside. If sustained for too long, Tandava Karma will destroy Shiva before his opponent even falls. Despite his body being heavily damaged and losing multiple arms during his battle with Raiden, Shiva remains resolute and never takes a single step back. At the decisive moment, he concentrates all of his remaining strength into his ultimate technique, Deva Loka, unleashing a devastating finishing kick to secure a hard-fought victory for the divine side. After the battle, Shiva shows no arrogance, instead granting Raiden absolute respect as a true warrior. This is the true nature of the god of destruction, one who not only possesses supreme power, but also honors those who dare to fight to the very end. Beelzebub. Beelzebub, also known as the Lord of the Flies, is one of the darkest and most solitary existences in the world of the gods. To humanity, he is seen as a symbol of filth and destruction. Within the divine realm, Beelzebub is cursed by Satan and lives in isolation as he is shunned by the other gods. This overwhelming solitude gradually turns him into an individual obsessed with death, driving him to continuously create artificial beings in the hope that one day someone powerful enough will appear to end his own life. Beelzebub's core ability is vibration manipulation. By forcing his body to vibrate at extremely high frequencies, he can effortlessly cut through and destroy matter. He clearly separates the roles of his 2 arms. His left arm is dedicated to defense, while his right arm focuses on offense, allowing him to maximize the destructive efficiency of his vibrations. His primary weapon is the staff Apomeus granted to him by Hades, which amplifies these vibrations and makes every attack and every defensive action far more lethal. Alongside this power, Beelzebub also carries the curse known as demonic destrudo. When his emotions exceed his control, he risks transforming into a mindless monster capable of destroying everything around him, including those he once cared for. Because of this danger, Beelzebub constantly maintains a cold and perfectly rational state of mind. At Ragnarok, Beelzebub faces Nikola Tesla in a battle that represents a direct contrast between human science and divine destruction. Against Tesla's electromagnetic abilities, teleportation, and specially constructed combat space, Beelzebub does not rush to attack. Instead, he calmly observes and analyzes, gradually deciphering the operational structure behind Tesla's techniques. As the battle continues, his cold and terrifying computational ability becomes increasingly evident. When Tesla establishes an absolute electromagnetic control zone to dominate the battlefield, Beelzebub immediately counters with devastating vibrational attacks that begin to dismantle the situation step by step. When pushed to the edge of disadvantage, he activates the forbidden technique known as Original Sin of the Netherworld, merging offensive and defensive vibrations into a single point. The resulting massive black spherical explosion engulfs the entire arena and unleashes destructive power capable of annihilating everything within it. Tesla survives by the narrowest margin only by sacrificing a portion of his armor's energy core, clearly demonstrating the overwhelming magnitude of Beelzebub's attack. At the decisive moment, even after Tesla pours all of his remaining strength into a final counterattack, Beelzebub coldly ends the battle with the technique Sorath Resh. Using his bare hands, he pierces through the technological armor, transmits destructive vibrations directly inside, and crushes his opponent's heart in an instant. This victory not only secures a point for the gods, but also leaves a deep mark on Beelzebub himself. For the first time, he realizes that humans and gods are not as different as he once believed. From that moment onward, his perception of humanity begins to change. Hades. Hades is the king of Helheim, the ruler of the realm of the dead, known for his calm and imposing presence. Contrary to his cold exterior, Hades is a deeply affectionate elder brother who always places his siblings above all else. The death of Poseidon is not merely a loss, but a deep wound in the heart of the king of the underworld. Entering Ragnarok, Hades does not fight for honor or power, but out of hatred and the responsibility of an older brother seeking justice for his fallen brother. Hades' weapon is a bident, a divine armament wielded with near absolute precision. In combat, he can seamlessly shift between high-speed thrusts and powerful sweeping attacks, while instantly altering the trajectory of the spearhead to counter his opponent's offense. Each time the bident is swung, the pressure it generates is so intense that it creates razor-sharp gusts of wind, powerful enough to tear through an enemy's body even before the blade makes contact. It is this very pressure that inflicts the first wounds on Qin Shi Huang, demonstrating that Hades' power comes not only from his weapon, but also from his overwhelming physical might. When a finishing blow is required, Hades uses Persephone Titan, gripping the bident close to the spearhead and bringing it straight down with the full weight and authority of his power. Even in moments when he cannot wield his weapon in time, he immediately shifts into close-quarters combat, using precise knee strikes and blocks to maintain pressure. Every movement Hades makes carries the bearing of a king long accustomed to war, never wasting a beat and never squandering a single moment. Hades' most terrifying power truly erupts when he wagers his own divine blood. By slashing his chest and infusing his blood into the bident, Hades strengthens his weapon with his very life force in exchange for supreme power and an overwhelming pressure capable of severing Qin Shi Huang's arm. However, each use of this power steadily drains Hades' vitality. It is an absolute exchange, one in which the king of the underworld willingly places his own life on the scales to achieve victory. Even so, Qin Shi Huang does not yield. Through human willpower and technique, he gradually adapts, destroys the blood-soaked bident, and delivers the decisive blow. Hades falls in the calm composure of a king who has given everything he had. He accepts defeat with his honor intact, embodying the imposing dignity of the king of Helheim. Apollo. Apollo is the god of light of Mount Olympus, a deity closely associated with art, music, and prophecy. In the eyes of the gods, Apollo is narcissistic and arrogant, constantly obsessed with his own beauty. As he witnesses other Greek gods fall one by one, Apollo feels no sympathy, believing their deaths to be the inevitable fate of those who are not perfect enough. Apollo's power is directly tied to his control over light. He can create extremely durable threads of light that serve both as defensive barriers and as offensive weapons, striking with near absolute precision. Apollo's divine weapon is the golden-threaded gauntlets Artemis, which allow him to weave light into various flexible forms, ranging from defensive shields to combat gauntlets capable of delivering powerful close-range attacks. When he fully releases the power of Artemis, Apollo can summon a massive statue along with a golden bow, firing arrows of tremendous force that travel at the speed of light. This is the fastest attack in the heavens, one that even other gods struggle to perceive or defend against. In his battle against Leonidas, despite sustaining severe injuries, Apollo never takes a step back. At the decisive moment, Apollo concentrates all of his power and transforms himself into a blazing arrow of light. He fires his own body forward at terrifying speed, delivering a piercing strike that breaks through all defenses to finish the king of Sparta and secure a glorious victory for the divine side. After the battle, Apollo bears scars that can never be erased. Yet, rather than seeing them as flaws, he regards them as marks of his combat experience and the clearest proof of the beauty he has truly come to understand. Susanoo no Mikoto. Susanoo is the god of storms in Japanese Shinto and the embodiment of the pinnacle of swordsmanship in the divine world. In mythology, Susanoo slew countless monsters, most notably Yamata no Orochi, the legendary eight-headed serpent firmly establishing himself as a sword god whom no one dared to take lightly. In the arena of Ragnarok, Susanoo faces Okita Tsuji, one of humanity's greatest prodigy swordsmen. From the very opening exchanges, the battle erupts into a lightning-fast clash, where blades collide at extreme speed with overwhelming force. While Okita overwhelms his opponent with terrifying speed and relentless pressure, Susanoo proves himself to be the type of adversary who becomes more dangerous the more he is pushed, as his entire fighting style revolves around reading rhythm and delivering fatal counterattacks. Susanoo's weapon is the divine sword Ame no Murakumo, a blade sharp enough to tear through the air with every swing. What truly sets him apart is not mere physical strength, but the refined sword system of a true sword god. He can assume a solid defensive stance known as Shinra Yaoyorozu, a posture that appears simple yet functions like an impenetrable wall, nullifying Okita's continuous and ferocious slashes. When the moment is right, Susanoo unleashes his trump card, the ultimate technique, Ama no Magaeshi. This is a counter-slash released at the precise instant the opponent enters striking range, generating a pressure wave like a vacuum blade that travels beyond the reach of a katana. The true danger of this technique lies in its explosive speed and power, though its destructive force gradually diminishes with distance, meaning that a sufficiently perceptive opponent can still find an opening to break its rhythm and counter it. When the divine sword shatters completely, Susanoo is forced to cross the final boundary of swordsmanship and enter an unprecedented realm. He awakens his ultimate technique known as Musoken, also called no sword, a state in which he no longer requires a visible blade to attack. These invisible slashes pierce through space itself and strike directly from within, as if the blade materializes inside the opponent's body. This technique is extremely dangerous as each use erodes Susanoo's own life force. Although he strikes Okita twice with Musoken, the price of wielding such power is far too great. As his wounds accumulate and his vitality is completely exhausted, Susanoo finally falls, and Okita secures the 6th victory for humanity. Regardless of the outcome, this battle is remembered as one of the highest-level sword duels in all of Ragnarok, a confrontation where both warriors showed absolute respect for the blade and the path they chose to walk. Loki. Loki is one of the most dangerous trickster gods in Ragnarok, a chaotic existence who hides fear behind a mocking smile. At first, Loki viewed Ragnarok as nothing more than entertainment, a game in which the gods would inevitably crush humanity. However, everything changed after the death of Poseidon. For the first time, Loki realized that gods could be killed. From that moment on, fear began to seep into the heart of the one who had always laughed at everything. Beneath his deceitful nature, Loki harbors a twisted affection for Brunhilde. In the past, he was once a serious and terrifying god, until the day he accidentally witnessed Brunhilde's smile. From that instant, Loki changed, turning himself into a mischievous trickster simply to see her smile one more time. He once offered to save Brunhilde alone from Odin's wrath, and even kept a doll modeled after her by his side. Yet his feelings were never returned, and Loki was never able to return to the moment when she smiled at him as she once did. Loki's power revolves around copying and creating clones through his magical rings. He can produce countless different bodies, each clone serving as a perfect combat tool but lacking true consciousness. With his divine weapon in hand, the number of clones Loki can create becomes nearly limitless. Not only that, he can shapeshift flawlessly and even use another person's body as living armor, making it almost impossible to distinguish reality from illusion. In his battle against Simo Heiha, Loki deliberately chooses a snowy forest as the battlefield to gain absolute advantage. He silently positions his clones, observes Simo from afar, and sets elaborate traps, believing he has complete control over the game. Loki even creates clones in the forms of Odin, Thor, and Hercules in an attempt to crush his opponent's spirit. However, he underestimates Simo's firepower and combat resolve. Each bullet is fired without hesitation, systematically erasing every clone Loki creates. In his final gambit, Loki disguises himself as Hercules and uses his own body as bait. When the bullet pierces his heart, Loki believes he has deceived Simo and secured victory. But in that very moment, Simo turns and fires the decisive shot. The bullet spins at terrifying speed, so fast that even Loki cannot react. Loki collapses on the spot. In his final moments, he no longer thinks of the gods or victory, but only of Brunhilde. That shot marks the 543rd kill of Simo Heiha and secures yet another victory for humanity in Ragnarok. Heracles. Heracles is a rare symbol of power that walks hand in hand with compassion in the world of the gods. Unlike most gods who view humanity as inferior, Heracles always chose to use his strength to protect mankind. When the gods once intended to destroy humanity, it was Heracles who stood up in opposition, willing to confront the gods themselves to prevent such a catastrophe. He accepted the ambrosia and stepped onto the path of becoming a demigod under one single condition: that the gods would cease harming humankind. To be fully acknowledged, Heracles was forced to overcome 12 nearly impossible trials. After completing them, he obtained 12 divine powers, each one capable of elevating his strength, speed, and combat ability to an entirely different level. Entering Ragnarok as a representative of the divine side, Heracles faced Jack the Ripper in an environment that was entirely unfavorable to him. Even so, he fought as a righteous warrior, wielding his legendary club and the powers he had earned at the cost of his own life. Heracles' strength allowed him to unleash devastating attacks, swings powerful enough to crush his opponent, and even to alter his own body to increase destructive force in each moment. Even when his body was gravely injured, suffering massive blood loss and steadily approaching its limit, Heracles never once retreated. The most tragic moment of the battle came with Heracles' final choice. Even while standing before a finishing blow, he did not strike down his enemy, but instead opened his arms and embraced Jack, an act of forgiveness and love for humanity until his final breath. That very compassion led to his defeat by Jack's decisive attack, securing victory for mankind. However, what Heracles left behind was not a loss but hope and absolute respect from both sides. He used his own life to prove that the greatest strength does not come from violence but from an unshakable compassion. Odin. Odin is the supreme god of the Norse pantheon, the one who stands at the pinnacle of power and is revered as the father of all. However, behind this title lies a far more terrifying truth. Odin is not merely an ordinary god, but a being whose origin is tied to the primordial gods, entities born from primordial chaos, existing even before the gods themselves, and responsible for the creation of the universe. In the primordial era, Yggdrasil was a collective of 88 ancient gods. Among them, the four most powerful believed that the lower gods had grown too numerous and too weak, and that the world needed to be destroyed and recreated from the beginning. This extreme ideology led 7 other gods to side with them, directly opposing the remaining 77 gods and igniting the great conflict later known as the original Ragnarok. The war ended in the defeat of the extremist faction. Most of those who followed the 4 gods were destroyed, while the survivors were sealed away. Before disappearing completely, they sealed their souls into artifacts of tremendous power and scattered them across the world, awaiting the day they would be awakened. The sword Gram was one such relic. When the nameless god touched Gram, the soul of the ancient Odin awakened. Primordial power flooded his body, turning his hair pure white and destroying his left eye. From that moment on, he was no longer an ordinary god, but Odin, the inheritor of the name, the power, and the ambition of the ancient existence. Step by step, he came to dominate the Norse realm and rise to the highest position in the divine world. Odin's true objective was never limited to the Ragnarok between gods and humanity. Instead, he sought to exploit this chaos to resurrect all of the primordial gods of Yggdrasil, thereby fulfilling his ambition to destroy and recreate the world according to his own will. In terms of power, Odin possesses the ability to drain life itself, causing everything around him to wither and collapse through his mere presence. His weapon is the spear Gungnir, which never misses its target and can unleash devastating shockwaves. When he enters his true combat state, Odin can also alter his form, releasing the full extent of the power he has concealed for so long. In the current Ragnarok, Odin has officially entered the 12th round to face Sakata Kintoki. Yet this battle is not simply a contest of strength. It is the point where the fate of the gods, humanity, and Odin's long-nurtured plan of destruction converge. What is about to unfold may ultimately determine the true ending of Ragnarok. Anubis. Anubis is a mysterious Egyptian god who has not yet officially appeared in the Record of Ragnarok anime. In ancient Egyptian belief, Anubis is known as the god of death and the afterlife, the guide who leads the souls of the dead to the next world, as well as the guardian deity of mummification and funerary rites. He is not a bringer of death, but a guardian of the boundary between life and death. Although Anubis's design and abilities have yet to be revealed in Record of Ragnarok, his symbolic role alone is enough to make audiences anticipate a god who may carry a completely different presence compared to the divine warriors who have appeared so far. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos.